A man pulls up a chair next to a clerk in a bank's payments team and asks her to send a large payment exactly the way she does it every day. She does. 90 seconds, done, money gone. Then he asks one question. Who was the second person who approved that? She looks at him. For this system, nobody. It has always been like that. Nobody lied to him. Nobody broke a rule that morning. And in the next few minutes, you will see how one bank audit actually runs. The two questions that decide whether a control is real and why this finding nearly got written off as low risk. Here is the strange part. The bank's own policy is clear. A payment that big needs a second pair of eyes. The rule exists, everyone on that team can quote it, but the software was never set up to demand it. So for 2 years, the rule lived in a document and nowhere else. Nobody noticed because nobody was looking. And that is the entire reason this job exists. Every bank tells its board, its regulator, and its customers, our controls work. Internal audit is the team paid to find out whether that sentence is true. So hold one question in your head for the rest of this. Management says the controls work. Who proves it? So why was he sitting at that desk at all? Not because someone tipped him off. Once a year, internal audit maps everything the bank does. Every process, every system, every business line, scored by risk. That map is the audit universe, and it drives a plan. What gets audited this year and what waits? The profession's standards require that plan to rest on a documented risk assessment, refreshed at least once a year. In a German bank, the supervisor adds its own line. The plan is risk-oriented, the management board approves it, and essentially every activity gets looked at within about 3 years, sooner where the risk is special. Now look at our desk. High-value payments, a lot of money, leaving the bank, fast. That desk was never going to wait 3 years. Then comes the email nobody enjoys receiving. The audit is announced, and it arrives with 2 things, an objective and a scope. What exactly is being examined, and just as importantly, what is not? Payments above a threshold in these 2 systems over the last 12 months. That is the box. The standards require those objectives and that scope to be written down, because the scope is what keeps an audit a test instead of a fishing trip. Attached is the document request list. Policies, system settings, every payment in scope. The audit is now in the room, and week 1 is mostly people hunting for documents nobody has opened in 3 years. And here is the move that cracked this case open. He did not just read the policy. He asked to see the process run once, end to end, performed by the person who actually does it. Auditors call that a walkthrough. You follow one real payment from the moment it is keyed in to the moment the money leaves, using the same screens the staff use. Not the manual, the transaction. This is where paper meets reality. The policy said the system would stop her and demand a second approver. He watched the payment sail through without one. In an audit, a document is a claim. A walkthrough is a test. Every control faces the same 2 questions, and people constantly collapse them into one. Question 1. Is this control even designed to work? If it ran exactly as prescribed, would it catch the thing it exists to catch? Question 2. Did it actually operate that way every time, all year? 1 is about the blueprint. 2 is about reality. Auditors call them the test of design and the test of operating effectiveness. And the sharpest wording comes from the audit standards, right there on your screen. Now notice what our case does. It fails question 1. The control was never designed to fire, because the system never asked for a second approval. And when the blueprint is broken, there is nothing left to test. Checking whether the lock was used is pointless when there is no lock. But the board will ask the obvious question, how bad is it? Nobody rechecks 2 years of payments by hand, so the auditor pulls a sample, made as representative of the whole population as he can. It is an honest compromise, and the danger has a name, sampling risk. The slice you took might not look like the rest of the cake. Every item he checks becomes evidence, and evidence has a bar. Relevant, reliable, sufficient. Not, I saw it on her screen. And the file is written to a standard that is quietly brutal. Another competent auditor who was never in that room has to open the working papers and reach exactly the same conclusion. Now he writes it up, and a real finding has a shape. It is not, the payments team is careless. The standards spell out what belongs in the file. Criteria, what should be true. The bank's own policy demands a second approver. Condition, what is actually true. The system never asks for one. Cause, why. The control was never switched on when the system went live. Effect, so what? Every high-value payment for 2 years left this bank with a single pair of eyes on it. And a recommendation, the fix. Notice how boring that structure is? That is the point. A finding built like that is very hard to argue with and very easy to act on. And now the part nobody outside the audit ever sees. The draft goes to management, and here is what a smart, busy manager says. The policy exists, our people know the rule, nothing bad actually happened. This is a training point, not a real weakness. Rate it low, we will remind the team. It sounds so reasonable. It is also the most common way a real problem gets quietly downgraded. So run it back through the 2 questions. If the system lets you skip the second approver, the control is not being circumvented. It does not exist. That is a design deficiency, and you cannot train your way out of a design deficiency. The rating follows the risk, not how uncomfortable the news is. The finding stays. So who fixes it? Not the auditor. Internal audit owns the finding and how severe it is. Management owns the action, with a named owner and a deadline. And if they disagree, nothing gets quietly deleted. German rules make the audited unit put its position in writing, and the standards are blunt about the escalation. If the head of audit believes management has accepted a risk beyond what the bank should carry, it goes to senior management, and if it is still unresolved, to the board. Resolving that risk is not internal audit's job. Serious deficiencies do not wait politely for the quarterly report either. Then the loop closes. The deadline arrives, and the auditor goes back and tests again. Our payment system? The second approval was finally switched on, and he tried to push a payment through alone. The system stopped him. That is what closed looks like, not a promise, a retest. One last thing, because it is changing that sample. If every payment is just data, a model can test all of them, not 40, and flag every single one that went out alone. And the profession knows it. In a 2026 study of internal audit leaders, more than 8 in 10 expect to use AI more over the coming year, while fewer than 4 in 10 think their own function is ready for AI-driven fraud. But look at what changes and what does not. The machine can look at everything. It still cannot decide what counts as too risky or carry the sentence. Your control does not work into a boardroom. An audit opinion is an act of accountability. The model searches, a human signs. So that is one audit, end to end. Risk picks the desk, the scope draws the box. A walkthrough compares paper against reality. 2 questions decide whether the control is real. Is it built to work, and did it work every time? Evidence backs it, and a named human is on the hook until a retest proves it is fixed. And the clerk from the beginning? She never did anything wrong. She was doing her job inside a control that was never switched on. That is what internal audit is really for. Not catching a villain, but testing whether a bank's promises survive contact with reality. If breakdowns like this are useful to you, the free Reg AI brief newsletter is where the next one lands. I will see you there.